All right, what's going on, Suns fans? It's CRO back with some more Suns predictions, and the regular season is already over. It went by pretty fast. Not gonna lie, 82 games flew by fast. It's already been 2 months since we got Kevin Durant, and we're locked into the fourth seed. We're taking on the LA Clippers in the first round. So today, I'm just going to be giving you guys a quick preview on the series and what I think is going to happen, how I think it's going to pan out, and who I think is going to win. So basically, let me go ahead and share my screen. So the first thing that I want to talk about, by the way, if I sound kind of messed up, it's because I'm kind of sick right now. So my apologies for that. But the first thing I want to talk about getting into this series is Paul George. He's expected to be sidelined for the start of the first round against the Suns. So basically, keywords sideline for the start, meaning Paul George will most likely be coming back in this series eventually. We don't know when. Um, we're looking at maybe a game 3, a game 4, a game 5 if it goes to a 5-game series. We're looking at maybe somewhere around there for Paul George to come back. But for the start of the series, he will not be playing game 1 in Phoenix next Sunday. That's confirmed by Shams. So basically, if Paul George were playing at the beginning of the series, I'd say, yeah, this is going to be really competitive. You got Paul George and Devin Booker chirping at each other nonstop. You got KD versus Kawhi, which we didn't really get to see a fair series between them in 2019. You got KD versus Westbrook as well, which, to be honest, I feel like that's going to be comedy. I know a lot of people wanted to see Steph Curry versus KD in the first round, but not a lot of people are really talking about how much of a comedy show it's going to be between KD and Westbrook. I think that's going to be really funny, to be honest. But moving on. So with Paul George coming back later in the series, most likely, I could see this being a really competitive series. Now, this series, I know a lot of people wanted us to play Golden State, get the toughest opponent out of the way first, but people underestimate how tough the Clippers can be, especially Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs. Now, obviously, Kawhi Leonard, we don't know if he's going to have that playoff mode. We don't know if he's going to really go back to his 2019 form or whatever he did in the playoffs that year. But, me personally, I think he'll at least lead that team to maybe a win or two. So I do have this series going to 6 games, and I do have the Suns winning eventually. I know a lot of people think we're going to annihilate this team. Me personally, I could see it going to 6, maybe 7, because the Clippers have a deep roster. They have a far better bench than the Suns do. At least, even though their starters almost lost to our G League squad the other day, playoffs are completely different. And from what I've seen this season, when our starters are playing, our bench only shows up occasionally. So basically, they're kind of an inconsistent bench. They'll show up in some games, they won't show up in other games. We don't know what they're going to do in the playoffs yet, but I'm not going to talk about how their starters almost lost to our bench or whatever, because it's playoff time now. It's completely different. We don't know what our bench is going to be like in the playoffs, which I'm about to get to our bench real quick. But back to Paul George. With him being out, I feel like the Suns can take the first 2 games at home. They're at home. The Suns have a far above 500 record at home. They're really tough at home, especially in the playoffs. Everybody loves the fans in Phoenix, how energetic they are, how amazing they are at supporting their team in the playoffs. If Paul George is out for the first 2 games, I think it should be a no-brainer, a no question that the Suns and a no excuse that the Suns take at least the first 2 games in the series at home against the Clippers. Now, I'm going to get to our team now. So KD and Devin Booker. Now, basically, with KD being on this team now, I guess you can pretty much make a case and say, okay, with KD on the team, he's going to be the one that's getting double teamed. I think Monty Williams came out and said that Kevin Durant's going to be playing 40 minutes of each game in the playoffs, which obviously he should be. But this is why the series is also important on Devin Booker's part. If Kevin Durant's going to be the one that's getting double teamed, Booker's going to have more open shots. He's going to have more ability to drive into the paint, maybe draw a foul or so. It matters on Devin Booker a lot as much as it does on Kevin Durant. Now, Kevin Durant, obviously, we all know his favorite time is in the playoffs. He always does get in the playoffs no matter what. So Kevin Durant's going to do his part. Question is, we have to see Devin Booker do his part because there's some games occasionally he'll drop 40s or 30-point games, but in some occasions he will disappear. So we can't have that in the first round if Kevin Durant's the one getting double teamed. Now, what I also want to get to is I think the series is going to matter a lot on DeAndre Ayton and Chris Paul. I think that's going to be the most important part of this series is how good DeAndre Ayton and Chris Paul do. Now, obviously, we all know Chris Paul's aging. He's not really the same as he used to be, but he's done a lot better in this last week or two, especially on the catch and shoot. Chris Paul ended the regular season pretty strong. I know we rested our guys in the last 2 games, but we have the momentum with our starting lineup heading into the playoffs. They're 8-0 with Kevin Durant. Chris Paul was a big part of that as well. My biggest concern and a player who I really think is going to determine whether we win this series or not is DeAndre Ayton. Now, the reason I say that is because people are going to be focused on Kevin Durant. They're going to be focused on Devin Booker. And as far as Chris Paul goes and why I say his performance is going to be important is because they're going to leave him wide open. We've seen so many teams leave Chris Paul wide open from the 3-point line, give him so many mid-range shots. Chris Paul's going to have to knock those shots down. When it comes to DeAndre Ayton, I think he's going to be the most important player in this series because he needs to get those rebounds, because I think lately he's averaging 5 or 6 rebounds a game. Ayton has to get those rebounds. He has to get those easy layups. He has to drive in the paint more. He needs to draw the fouls more, which we haven't really seen him do a lot this season. He needs to, actually try to score in the paint a lot more, especially because the Clippers have a deep roster. Their bench is going to show up. Norman Powell, Terrence Mann, Bones Highland, they're all going to do their part from the bench. We need the job from our starters along with our bench, especially being in DeAndre Ayton. I feel like his performance is going to really determine how far this series goes and if the Phoenix Suns can close the Clippers out in 4, 5, 6 games, however long it takes. DeAndre Ayton is an underrated performer that needs to show up in this series specifically. That's what I think. I know Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, they're going to do their part. Chris Paul, he just has to knock down those open shots because we all know the Clippers are going to give it to him. DeAndre Ayton, he's got to do his job in the paint. I don't really want to see all those mid-range shots that he does, even though he makes all those shots. I want to see him in the paint a lot more, and I want to see him draw more fouls. Get the Clippers into foul trouble. Have Ty Lue take their starters out, especially because the fouling issues have not been on Phoenix's the Suns' side lately this season. We've always had our guys get into foul trouble. Monty Williams has had to take Ayton out on several occasions early in the game. Same thing with Devin Booker. Same thing with Kevin Durant. The fouling issue has not been on our side at all this season. So if that's going to continue in the playoffs, we have to do as much as we can to get the Clippers into foul trouble as well, starting with DeAndre Ayton getting involved in the paint a lot more and drawing the foul. So that's why I feel like DeAndre Ayton is the most important player in this series. Now, getting to our bench has to do as much as they can. Torrey Craig, he's been playing really good recently, especially defensively. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw him on Kawhi Leonard maybe a few times. The Clippers have possession. Or I almost said Josh Okogie. Josh Okogie is going to do his part on the starting lineup as well, especially defensively and getting the rebounds because he's been doing amazing on that lately. Ish Wainwright and Landry Shamet, those are the 2 guys I do not want to see getting any playoff minutes with the way they closed out the regular season, unless our guys are in foul trouble pretty much. Cameron Payne, Bismack Biyombo, we don't know if they're going to play. They got injured against the Lakers. We don't know if they're going to be playing at the start of the series. So Jock Landale, guys like him, they're going to have to show up. Hopefully Monty Williams gives Darius Bazley some more minutes because he absolutely deserves it, especially the way he played against the Clippers starting lineup the other day. Give Bazley some more minutes because he deserves it. Saben Lee, maybe you could get him involved a little bit, especially if we don't have Cameron Payne involved. Saben Lee dropped 25 points the other day. Maybe he can carry that on into the playoffs. Damian Lee, who's been a good 3-point shooter, those guys need to knock down their shots from the 3-point line because the Clippers, a big part that they outweigh us in is their bench. Their bench is far, at least on paper. I know paper doesn't mean anything, but on paper they have a far better bench than we do. So that's what it's going to have to take. Like I said, I know KD's going to do his part. Booker's going to do his part. My biggest, the players who I think are really important to determine this series are DeAndre Ayton, our bench, and Chris Paul knocking down his open shots. That's what I think is the most important part of this series because we all know the Clippers are going to be focused on KD and Devin Booker. So as long as our other guys can do their part and not rely on KD and Booker to drop 30, 40, or 50 or whatever they do, we also need the help from our other guys. And DeAndre Ayton is who I think is the most important part of how the series is determined. So that's what I got. I do have the Suns winning this series in at least 6 games. I could see it going to 7, but with Paul George out, I feel like we have no excuses to at least go up 1-0, 2-0, however games he's out. So we'll see what Kawhi Leonard does as far as carrying that team in the playoffs. We'll see what their bench does compared to ours. But my personal opinion, I feel like the Suns can beat this team in the first round in at least 6 games. That's what I have it being, but you never know. So let me know what you guys think about this series. What do you guys think is going to happen? Who do you think is going to win? But with that being said, guys, I'm gone.